يسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينصرون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره نكس في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقناهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
صلوات محمد وعلى
محمد وآل محمد صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل
حسین الغریب الغریب الحسین حسین الشہید شہید الحسین حسین الغریب الغریب الحسین حسین الشہید شہید الحسین. دہائی دہائی خدا را دہائی یہ دشت بلا میں ہے کیسی تباہی بہایا ہے کس نے یہ خون محمد قیامت یہ ڈھائی ہے کس نے الہی جوانوں بزرگوں کو مارا گیا ہے شہیدوں میں شامل ہے ننھا سپاہی حسین الغریب الغریب الحسین حسین الشہید کیا جشن برپا یوں اہل ہوس نے شہیدوں کے لاشوں پہ ڈھنکے بجائی جلا ڈالے آل محمد کے خیمے سکینہ کی منہ پر تماچے مارے جو بیمار تھا اس کا بستر نہ چھوڑا نبی زادیوں پر بھی درے چلائے حسین الغریب الغریب الحسین حسین الشہید اٹھی اپنے مرکد سے بنت چادر میں چہرہ چھپا کر گئی کربلا میں تو اس نے یہ دیکھا ہے بوسیدہ کرتے میں ایک لاش بے سر بدن سارا تیروں سے چھلنی پڑا ہے لہو میں ہے ڈوبا ہوا سارا پے کر حسین الغریب الغریب الحسین حسین الشہید تڑپ کر وہ چلائی شبیر بیٹا لہو میں نہائے حسر بھی جدا ہے تبر کس نے مارے ہے سارے بدن پر یہ تیروں پہ رکھ رکھا ہے کس نے جنازہ، کہاں ہے میرا لال عباس بولو، میں پوچھوں گی اس سے یہ کیسے ہوا ہے، حسین الغریب الغریب الحسین، حسین الشہید الشہید الحسین۔ صدا سن کے زہرا کدھر آئی غازی، جدا تن سے سر تھا تو شانے کٹے تھے، غم و یاس و حسرت میں مجروح و مضطر، کہیں کیا کہ دریا کنارے پڑے تھے، سوئے الکماب جو بی بی نے دیکھا، وفاؤں کے ساحل پہ جھنڈے گھرے تھے، حسین الغریب الغریب الحسین، حسین الشہید الشہید الحسین۔
صلوات بر محمد و آل محمد۔ وجود دریا کو مات دے دے گا، وجود موج دریا کو مات دے دے گا، وہ تشنگی کو بھی اپنے صفات دے دے گا، کہو یہ کشمکش حر سے اب نہ گھبرائے، کہو یہ کشمکش حر سے اب نہ گھبرائے، وہ سوچنے کے لیے ایک رات دے دے گا، وہ سوچنے کے لیے ایک رات دے دے گا، اور اسے بناؤں گا میں، اسے بناؤں گا میں شرم دستگیر اپنا، اسے بناؤں گا میں شرم دستگیر اپنا، خدا کی راہ میں جو دونوں ہاتھ دے دے گا، خدا کی راہ میں جو دونوں ہاتھ دے دے گا، وجود موجیں دریا کو مات دے دے گا۔ صلوات محمد و آل محمد۔ مومنین باواز بلند صلوات۔ ہم ازل سے ہیں شہیدی کے عزاداروں میں، ہم ازل سے ہیں شہیدی کے عزاداروں مغفرت کا ہے یقین گو ہے گناہگاروں میں، مغفرت کا ہے یقین گو ہے گناہگاروں میں، یا حسین آپ سا آقا کہیں دیکھا نہ سنا، یا حسین آپ سا آقا کہیں دیکھا نہ کیا، چلتی ہوئی تلواروں میں سجدہ حق کیا، چلتی ہوئی تلواروں میں، مغفرت کا ہے یقین گو ہے گناہگاروں میں، مغفرت کا ہے یقین گو ہے گناہگاروں میں۔ درود پڑھیں محمد رن سے جب شیخ کی طرف سے حر دیندار آیا، کس بشارت سے اڑاتا ہوا رہوار آیا، غلوا سید مظلوم کا غم خار آیا، جانثار خلف حیدر کرار، جانثار خلف حیدر کرار، تیغ نور سر را نظر آتا ہے، جلوہ قدرت اللہ نظر آتا ہے، جلوہ قدرت اللہ نظر آتا ہے، یہ سخن سن کے پکارا پسر ساد شریر، ہاں طلب طرف دار و شہدی پہ چلے نئے زو تیر، لے کے ہر باؤں کو بڑا فوج کا انبوہ کثیر، فاتحہ پڑھ کے جوان مرد نے کھینچی شمشیر، فاتحہ پڑھ کے جوان مرد نے کھینچی شمشیر، روح کا منہ سرخ ہوا فوج، ستم زرد ہوئی، شعلہ تیغ سے بجلی کی چمک ہوئی، شعلہ تیغ سے بجلی کی چمک ہوئی، بڑھ کے فرماتے تھے عباس رہے عزت و جاہ، بارک اللہ کی دیتا تھا صدا دل برشاہ، کہتے تھے ابن حسن واہ غازی واہ، شاہ ضرب پہ فرماتے تھے ماشاء اللہ، شاہ ہر ضرب پہ فرماتے تھے ماشاء اللہ، اپنی جاں بازی کا غازی جو سلا پاتا تھا، مسکراتا ہوا تسلیم کو جھک جاتا تھا، مسکراتا ہوا تسلیم کو جھک جاتا تھا، حیف جھکنے میں لعینوں نے جو فرصت پائی، سامنا چھوڑ کے سو فوج غضب سے آئی، لاکھ خون زیر زیر ادھر اور ادھر تنہائی، بھاگ گھوڑے کی پھراتا تھا کہ برچھی کھائی، بھاگ گھوڑے کی پھراتا تھا کہ برچھی کھائی، آ گیا موت کے نیچے میں نہ کچھ دیر لگی، فرق پر گرز لگا دوش پر شمشیر لگی، فرق پر گرز لگا دوش پر شمشیر لگی، سینہ اُڑیا ہوا تیر چلے آدھا کے، رکھ دیا شیر نے خربوزے پہ سر نے اڑا کے، علی اکبر نے یہ حضرت سے کہا چلا کے، گرو ارشاد تو میں ماں کو بچاؤں جا کے، گرو ارشاد تو میں ماں کو بچاؤں جا کے، خادم حضرت زہرا علی گرتا ہے خاک پر، اب سید ازلی گرتا ہے خاک پر اب وہ سعید ازلی گرتا ہے شاہ رونے لگے یہ سنتے ہی مہماں کی خبر ہو گئی آنسوؤں سے ریش مبارک سکتر علی اکبر سے کہا تم ابھی ٹھہرو دلبر حر کی امداد کو ہم جائیں گے اے نور حر کی امداد کو ہم جائیں گے اے نور کس سے اس وقت کہوں میں جو خلق مجھ پر ہے لاش اٹھاؤں گا کہ مہمان کا حق مجھ پر ہے لاش اٹھاؤں گا کہ مہمان کا حق مجھ پر ہے یہ سخن کہے کہ چلے رن کو جناب شبیر وہاں گرا خاک پر گھوڑے سے ہور تاخیر دیکھ کر شاہ کو آتے ہوئے بھاگے بے پیر پہنچے لاشیں پہ امام دجا وقت اخیر پہنچے لاشیں پہ امام دجا وقت اخیر چمن ہستی مہمان کو اجڑتے دیکھا خاک پہ ایڑیاں زخمی کو رگڑتے دیکھا خاک پر ایڑیاں زخمی کو رگڑتے دیکھا گر کے لاشے کے برابر یہ پکارے سرور میرے مہمان و مددگار و معین و یاور گرز کیا تجھ کو لگا ٹوٹ گئی میری کمر گر پڑے گھوڑے سے اور آ نہ کی ہم کو خبر گر پڑے گھوڑے سے اور آ نہ کی ہم کو خبر دوست کے اجر میں کب دوست کو چین آیا ہے کھول دے چشم کے بھائی کے حسین کھول دے چشم کے بھائی کے حسین آیا ہے نیم و چشم سے حر نے رخ مولا دیکھا زیر سر زانوئے شبیر کا تکیہ دیکھا مسکرا کر طرف عالم بالا دیکھا شہ نے فرمایا کہ اے حر جری کیا دیکھا شہ نے فرمایا کہ اے حر جری کیا دیکھا عرض کی حسن روح حور نظر آتا ہے فرش سے عرش تلک نور نظر آتا ہے فرش سے عرش تلک نور نظر آتا مجھ کو لینے چلے آتے ہیں فرشتے یا شاہ ملک الموت بھی کرتا ہے محبت کی نگاہ خلد سے شیر خدا نکلے ہیں اللہ اللہ لو برآمد ہوئے شبیر پدر کے ہمراہ لو برابر ہوئے شبر بھی پدر کے ہمراہ ننگے سر احمد مختار کی پیاری آئی دیکھیے آپ کے نانا کی سواری دیکھیے آپ کے نانا کی سواری آئی کہہ کہ یہ گود میں شبیر کے لیے انگڑائی آیا ماتھے پہ عرق چہرے پہ زردی چھائی شہ نے فرمایا ہمیں چھوڑ چلے کیوں بھائی چل بسے حر جری پھر نہ کچھ آواز چل بسے حر جری پھر نہ کچھ آواز تیرے رونے پرواز کی توبہ کی طرح پتلیاں رہ گئی پھر کشے پتلیاں رہ گئی پھر کشے والا کی طرح
محمد وآل محمد باز بلند صلوات. Before any further announcement, may I request you all to please move a little forward. Thank you all for your kind cooperation, also for the generous donations that you people have been contributing for this great cause. Inshallah, Fatawassul Imam Zamana, we will be blessed with a bigger place, and sooner you'll have big place to inshallah commemorate the martyrdom of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Program at Al-Noor will continue inshallah till the 12th of Muharram. All these majalises will be recited by Hujjat al-Muslimeen, Sheikh Hassan Roushandel. He has kindly accepted our offer to recite majalis for all these nights. So please spread a word of mouth so that maximum mu'mineen can benefit from his inspirational lectures, inshallah. Program starts at 7:30 with Tilawat al-Quran, followed by Marsiya, and then Sheikh will come onto the mimbar for the lecture. You are all requested to please come on time, and also tell your family and friends to also be present in time, inshallah. Before I invite Sheikh, let me, please, can I request you all to recite Surah Fatiha for all the marhumin, especially for the sponsor of tonight's majlis, Mr. Hassan Raza and his family, and also the marhumin of Millat Jafriya. Bismillah. I would now like to request Sheikh Hassan Roushandel to please come onto the mimbar. Please welcome with a loud salawat. Allah salli ala.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، بارئ الخلائق أجمعين، باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنام، حبيب إله العالمين، أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين الهداة المهديين، ولا سيما على بقية الله في العالمين صاحب العصر والزمان، روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope and pray, insha'Allah, you are all doing well, hopefully benefiting from this month and benefiting from the remembrance of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, benefiting from the teachings of the life of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, the life of the Ahlul Bayt, remembering the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt, insha'Allah. Please recite the salawat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent the best of His creation for a group of people who, if we look at them from outside, they seem to be among the worst of His creation. Allah didn't protect the best of His creation, rather He sent them on a mission which resulted in a lot of pain, difficulty for them, but for a greater good. They sacrificed their life for God's mission, and the prophets went to people to invite them to faith. They went to people to invite them to belief in God, in Akhirah, the hereafter, do good deeds, and these were the general teachings of the prophets. But there is a huge distinction between the sacrifice that Imam Hussein alayhi salam made and the sacrifice that the prophets made. The prophets spent their whole life preaching to people who were pagans, didn't believe in God, didn't have the right perception of God, in order to bring them to Islam in a general term, meaning submitting themselves to Allah. But when we read the ziyarah of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, we see that he is the inheritor of Adam, the inheritor of Noor, the inheritor of Ibrahim, Musa, Isa. But when we see Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he sacrificed his life too. But the people who killed him were not pagans. So there is a huge difference here. They were people who believed in God. And if you look at it from the outside, you realize that you may even, on surface level, be able to make an argument to say that what the prophets did were quite different to what Imam Hussein did. But if we were not told by the ziyarat, if we were not told by the narrations that they were in line with what the prophets had done, their mission was in line with the mission of the prophets, then we would have said, okay, they're two different things. Imam Hussein alayhi salam fought a group of people who did believe in Islam, but the prophets, that was a completely different matter. But unfortunately, we cannot say that, because we do have teachings. We do have in the ziyarat, Waritha Adam, Waritha Nuh, Waritha Ibrahim. Okay. So what does this teach us? Perhaps this teaches us that what the prophets were also aiming at was not just a mere submission on surface level, by tongue, in action, just in action, of the people to Islam. So it wasn't a mere submission to God in practice. Pray, fast, because the people of the time of Imam Hussein, they also did the same thing. They were praying, they were fasting. Not just that. One of the scholars said that the meaning of qatilul abarat, the one who is killed for tears, abarat is tears, one of the scholars said the common understanding that people have, that they say abarat, tears, basically the tears of his Shia, the tears of his people. So basically Imam Hussein was killed and people are shedding tears for him. They say, no, that's not the meaning. Imam Hussein was killed by the tears of people who would cry for the sake of God, but out of enmity of Imam Ali alayhi salam, because of the teachings that their mothers used to give to them. They used to sit down in Sham and say, you know who Ali ibn Abi Talib is? And start saying bad things. And these people, innocent children, they would shed tears, but not for the sake of Imam Ali alayhi salam, but for the sake of Islam against Imam Ali alayhi salam. And as a result of that, Imam Hussein was someone who was killed due to the tears but not the tears for him, the tears against him. Tears that were in intention seeking proximity to God, but in action fighting the Imam in order to do that. So there is a huge difference on surface level between what Imam Hussein alayhi salam was killed for and what the prophets were killed for. But when you go in deep, you realize the essence of the message was the same. The essence of the message was that he wanted the surface level of submission to religion to sink in, to go in deep, deeper than surface level. Something that the pagans at the time of the prophets didn't have, and also the Muslims at the time of Imam Hussein didn't have. So whether they were fasting or not, they were praying or not, didn't make a difference. The fasting is important, which makes a difference in your life. The prayer, which is important, is the prayer which does tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar, prevents you from wrongdoing, prevents you from evil actions. And we see that this teaching started from Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha. Straight after the Prophet, in her khutbah fadakiyah, she reminds people that, have you forgotten why God has made salat wajib upon you? Have you forgotten why God has made zakat wajib upon you? Because the problem then was not the same problem as the prophets, because these people were actually engaging in these actions, but they had forgotten the purpose of it. So now the purpose of the Imams were to remind them of why are you doing what you're doing. And that is a very key point. So the mission of the Imams were in line with the mission of the prophets, but with the difference that now these people are engaging in actions, but they have lost the spirit behind it. So now the Imams are teaching them about the spirit, about how you as a human being need to grow when you're doing these things, because it's very possible that you are fasting, you are praying, you are doing all the surface level good deeds, actions, but inside you, you're not changing as a human being. And perhaps for some people, it may even be that their actions, their salat, their sawm, results in their not closeness to God, but them furthering themselves from God. So this is what the Imams are teaching us. We pray, inshallah, from these lectures, we hope that we're able to identify those places that we're going wrong, and inshallah, with the help of the Imam, to be able to fix it and move closer to God, which is the purpose, the title of these lectures. And inshallah, we'll be able to reach there with the loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The main topic of these lectures is reconnecting with God in the modern age. In the first few nights, we discussed that it is very important to reconnect with God. It's inevitable. We've passed the stage where it's an option. For a lot of us now, it's inevitable. There's no other way. We need to find a way to connect to God, which doesn't involve any form of teachings which takes us further because of their misunderstandings and because of the difficulties of understanding that exist, but an understanding that can actually help us connect. We were trying to do that in the past few nights. The first night we talked about tawakkul. The second night I elaborated on some of the points I mentioned on tawakkul, and we started a discussion of happiness, sadness, good and bad, whether it's good, whether it's bad, and suffering and pain. We talked about those topics. Then we entered the discussion of gratitude. So I would recommend everyone, the same way I recommended everyone in the last 2 nights, that if you haven't managed to listen to the lectures, you were not able to attend here or listen online, please make sure you go home and you listen to them. Because this is a series of lectures, and some of the things I mention, perhaps I have explained them in detail before and I just mentioned them briefly now. And if you haven't listened to the previous lecture, it may cause some doubts and confusion. So if you do feel that way, make sure you go and listen to the lectures. And if you think that the confusion and doubt is still there, then I am more than happy to address them after my lectures whenever you're free, inshallah. Last night we talked about gratitude. We said that God has laws in this world, and He's created this world in a way that He governs it with certain laws, that He does not change it for the sake of people. He doesn't change it for the sake of the Prophet, let alone normal people like us. And the Prophet has to abide by them, and we also need to do the same. One of the laws was that if you're grateful, then we will expand your potential of receiving more. Gratitude in this world does miracles. The verse in the Quran that talks about that is the verse, وَلَئِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. If you are grateful, if you, number one, know what God has given you. You sit down, you count them. We said Dua Arafah counts them. He doesn't say, God, thank you for everything. No, he goes into detail. He says, God, thank you for my nose. God, thank you for my ears, for my eyes, for me being able to breathe, for me having a family, a loving family, for me having a job. The smallest things that may be very insignificant in your eyes. You identify them, and when you do so, that increases in your capacity to receive more. So, لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. But you may ask, does this mean that if I'm not grateful, I'm going to lose whatever I have? Does this necessarily mean, so if I am grateful, I'm going to receive? So does this mean if I'm not grateful, God is going to definitely, necessarily take away from me? The answer is no, it doesn't mean that. That's why the continuation of the verse doesn't say, and if you are ungrateful, I will take away from you. But it says something very interesting. It says, وَلَئِن كَفَرْتُمْ إِنَّ عَذَابِي لَشَدِيدٌ. My punishment is severe. It doesn't say what type of a punishment it would be, but it says it is going to be severe. So let me give you an example. When you are grateful, imagine in a very materialistic manner, I'm very grateful for what Allah has given me, and Allah increases my rizq in this world. But what if I lose my gratitude and I'm not grateful? What happens? Inna adhabi la shadid. It may be the case that you're going to lose it. Maybe. But there could be other scenarios as well. Maybe you're going to continue to have whatever you have. But the way you used to connect with that thing and the way it used to bring you happiness, joy, contentment, that may go away. How many rich people do you know that live miserable lives? How many people who have materialistic gains in their life? But when you look at their life, that person is not an embodiment of gratitude, is not an embodiment of happiness, joy. I mentioned to you the example of the landlord a couple of nights ago. He's got properties, but he's always in anxiety and stress. You speak to him, the moment you say, how are you? He starts complaining about everything. He has material wealth, but his connection with it is not a connection that gives him calmness. It doesn't give him itminan. It doesn't give him the qualities that Allah mentions in the Quran about the awliyaullah. You see, he's very far from that. He has the material gain, but he's not benefiting from it. So inna adhabi la shadid doesn't necessarily mean he's going to take it away from you, but your relationship with that may very well change. So you wouldn't want that. Don't sit down and be happy and say, I'm not grateful, but look, I've got so much. Yeah, because the laws of the universe are quite complex. You don't know where and why and how you got that. Maybe it's because of a respect you did to your family. Maybe it's because of a good deed you did some other time. But if you're not grateful, then from another angle and from another perspective, it may impact your life. So this is a very important point. This is one point I wanted to mention about last night's. Moving on, I mentioned some points about suffering and pain. And I mentioned that it's very important not to complain and be a wise student of this world and learn about the laws, learn about how God governs this world, learn about His sunnah in this world. I mentioned that. But there was a question that was directed at me saying that, so by saying that, do you mean that we shouldn't go to therapy and counseling? Because in therapy and counseling, we open up and we talk about the problems we have. Well, that's not what I meant. I just have to mention that. This is a disclaimer. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counselor. I am a mental health first aider, if that means anything. But I am not a specialist in that area. But there's one thing I can say, and that is there is a difference between you, and you would know this yourself, there is a difference between you always getting stuck in a loop of negativity and always being able to see the negative thing in your life. Whatever happens to you, you always see the empty half of the glass. And when you're actually struggling with something and you go to someone in order for them to help you get out of it, there is a huge difference between the two. If you think about it, you can clearly distinguish between the two. Sometimes you're going to therapy, you know that, look, I'm struggling with something and I'm coming to you not because I want you to feel sorry for me, no, but I want you to actually help me because it's crippling. It's not helping me in my life. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're going there because there are times in your life that you feel like, okay, I always see negativity, but I feel like I haven't had much of negativity. So let me just go and speak to this person. The moment I talk about it, I feel better. You would know it yourself. I'm not going to make a judgment here whether that's right or wrong. I'm just going to say that there is a huge difference between the two, and I think every person is a good judge for themselves, whether they're doing the former or the latter. So that's my second point. It's interesting that every night I'm having some disclaimers about the previous night, which is to some degree good, because it shows that there are some people who listen. And that's the positive side of it, as we're talking about positivity and focusing on that. So alhamdulillah for that. And thank you very much for coming back with your questions. And if you do have any feedback or questions, please feel free to share them with me afterwards. Please recite the salawat. And now we get to the topic for today. This is a very important topic. Again, part of the series of Reconnecting with God, a very key point that if we don't get it right, it will hinder our progress in connecting with God. It will impact our relationship with God. And that topic is the topic of istighfar. Why is it important? When we look at our narrations, when we look at our teachings, there's a huge emphasis on the topic of istighfar, asking Allah for forgiveness. But what istighfar really is, before you're asking Allah for forgiveness, and that's probably the more important part of istighfar, that is the admitting to your mistakes. That's the main point. And when you look at the narrations and the scholars talk about istighfar, and they say istighfar is not about the word that you say. The word is a means, we explained last night. But what's very important is for you to develop this attitude, this mentality of observing your actions and admitting to your mistakes whenever you make one. This is so important and so key. Now, why do people not do that? Why do people find it difficult? Often you see that when you say to someone, have you made a mistake? You see, or if you say to me, when I say someone, I'm not excluding myself. When you look, everyone look at yourself right now. Sometimes you make a mistake and you realize that it's so difficult to admit to it. It's like your mind starts going around trying to find any justification as to why you did that, even if you didn't have that justification in your mind at that point. Just that you stay away from saying, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. One of the main reasons is because a person has tied their self-worth to their actions. This is a very important point. A person ties their sense of self-worth completely to the actions that they make. So if I commit a sin today and I look at myself, I feel that I'm less worthy than the moment I had not committed a sin. And who likes to feel unworthy? No one. So what the mind does is says, no, don't admit to your mistake. Don't admit you committed a sin. Why? Because the moment you do it, you make yourself vulnerable and you get sad. Suddenly you feel sorrow comes inside your heart because you say, why did I do that? I'm so bad. I'm so unworthy. I don't deserve to exist. This is something very common we're facing these days. But when you go back to religion, you realize that when the religion talks about istighfar, it not only expects you to fall into that, but quite to the contrary, quite the opposite. It talks about istighfar as something which is empowering, as something that when you admit to your mistake, if you do it correctly, the entire gham, the sorrow, the sadness that is inside your heart is removed when you do that. Where did I get this from? The story of Prophet Yunus alayhi salam. Please recite the salawat. We mentioned in one of the nights, the previous nights, I've forgotten which one. We mentioned that the prophets are also on a journey of learning. We mentioned the story of Yusuf. We said Yusuf was on a journey, Yaqub was on a journey in the story of learning and growing towards God. Now the story of Yunus alayhi salam. Yunus made a mistake. Something which for us may not be a mistake, but for him, being a prophet, God expected higher from him. But he made a mistake. He left the people, he cursed them. When he left the people, وَذَنُّونِ إِذْ ذَهَبَ مُغَاضِبًا فَظَنَّ أَن لَّن نَّقْدِرَ عَلَيْهِ. He was angry and he thought that we're not going to hold him accountable. He thought that we're not going to ask him, hey, what's going on? He thought he's going to get away with it. فَظَنَّ أَن لَّن نَّقْدِرَ عَلَيْهِ فَنَادَى فِي الظُّلُمَاتِ. What happened here? The famous story, the whale came and the whale swallowed him and he was in the belly of the whale. In that moment, he realized he made a mistake. He realized that incident that happened was a result of his mistake. Brothers and sisters, many a times in our lives, wrong things happen to us due to something that we have done. وَمَا أَصَابَكَ مِن سَيِّئَةٍ, the Quran says to the Prophet, فَمِن نَفْسِكَ, it's from you. Remember this. It's due to something you have done in this world. So if you are a smart, again, a wise student of this world, you will sit down and ponder and reflect and see, what did you do wrong? Where did you make a mistake? And immediately ask for forgiveness. This is what Yunus did. Yunus sat down and said, the moment he realized he made a mistake, he didn't cover it up. He immediately put his hands up and said, Allah ilaha illa anta subhanak. There is no God other than you. It's not that if I cover it up, you won't know. So I submit. I put my hands up. La ilaha illa ant subhanaka. Inni kuntu min al-zalimin. I was among the oppressors. He calls himself an oppressor. Something if you say to people today, they say, if you tell me an oppressor, and if I really believe in myself to be an oppressor, I'm going to fall into chronic depression. I am going to get so depressed and I can't even deal with myself. How can I be an oppressor? He says, no, wait. You're speaking to God. You're not speaking to anyone else. Yes, if it was with anyone else, yes, you would feel ashamed. You're like, are they going to forgive me? Are they not going to forgive me? What are they going to think of me? But you don't have any of these things with God. And when Yunus says this to God, immediately he says, Subhanaka inni kuntu min al-zalimin. I oppressed myself, and I admit. What happened? Did he suddenly fall into depression? No, because he knew who he was talking to, and he knew which God he is dealing with. As soon as he put his hands up, why would God hold him accountable when he's admitted to the mistake? Immediately God says, فَاسْتَجَبْنَا لَهُ. That's it. We responded to him. Everything's done. Finished, you know. You don't need to say anything else. فَاسْتَجَبْنَا لَهُ. What else did God do for him? وَنَجَّيْنَاهُ مِنَ الْغَامِ. It's so beautiful. What's the connection between the two? We responded to him. Not only that, we saved him from gham, from sadness. You know, the moment you realize you've made a mistake, that moment you feel so bad about yourself. God says, if you do the admitting to your mistake correctly, I will save it. The same way I saved it from Yunus. نَجَّيْنَاهُ مِنَ الْغَامِ. We took the gham away from his heart. Finished. Put your head up. It's done. And you may think, okay, God is favoring his prophet for this. But God reminds you, he says, no, it's about me. It's not about this being, whoever his name is, Yunus or whoever. وَكَذَلِكَ نُنْجِي الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. And this is the same way we save the mu'mins. Whoever is a mu'min and goes through the same process, we will save him from gham. Put your head up. Don't allow your thoughts to control yourself. The second greatest sin is what? Despair in God's mercy. These are the teachings of our religion. This is not some hocus pocus spirituality out there. This is our religion. And this is what we've had this whole time. So, what was meant to save you from sadness and sorrow today has become the source of sadness and sorrow and depression in people's lives. Why is that the case? Because we don't know who we are dealing with. The moment you realize that the God you're dealing with is the one who's Arhamur Rahimin, the moment you realize that there's nothing, there's no veil, there's no cover between you and him other than your own limitations. So the moment you lift the limitations, that's the moment you've arrived at your destination. in one of the du'as, I think it's in du'a iftitah. Again, these du'as are introducing God to us. He talks about God, the Imam. He says, الذي بعد فلا يرى وقرب فشهد النجوى. God is qarib and ba'id at the same time. Interesting. He's qarib, he's close, and he's far. But when he talks about God being far, he says God is far. وَبَعُدَ الَّذِي بَعُدَ فَلَا يُرَى. He's far, therefore he cannot be seen. He attributes the furtherness of God, God being far, the distance of God, to a limitation that's due to a human being. Seeing is something from a human being. But when it talks about the closeness of God, it says, وَقَرُبَ فَشَهِدَ النَّجْوَى. It's a quality that God has. What's his quality? شَهِدَ النَّجْوَى. He witnesses the whisperings that you do with him. So when it comes to his qualities, he's close. But when it comes to your limitations, he's far. He's far because of you, not because of him. So when Yunus realizes who he's dealing with, he immediately puts his hand up and says, Subhanaka inni kuntu min al-zalimin. And trust me, the moment you do this in your life, you realize that there is a burden that's lifted from your shoulders. Because now you're saying, oh God, I messed up. I admit I messed up, but that's fine. Because your love is unconditional towards me. It's my actions that's furthering me from you, that's distancing me from you. But you, however, you're not far. So when I admit to it, that's all that's required for me to get close to you and reconnect with you. Admitting to one's mistakes. This is the benefit of it. But now we're going to talk about the harms of not admitting to your mistakes. Please recite a salawat. Thank you very much. Think about this for a second. How many people have you met in your life that are so self-centered, self-righteous, that whatever mistake they make in their life, they have a justification for it. They find a reason. This person, as long as he finds a justification and a reason for his actions, then you see he's a narcissist, he or she is a narcissist, they don't care about other people around them, they do everything for their own sake and they justify it, they don't see how it's harming other people, how it's impacting them, they cannot see it anymore. So when you start with justifying so much, it gets to a point where you become numb, you become indifferent now. You cannot see reality anymore. And this person, as long as they can do it, they're this self-righteous person, but life doesn't always deal with you this way. There will come a time that someone overrules you, someone overtakes you, someone oppresses you, someone breaks you, destroys you. And then this person falls into the victimhood mode. This is something you see so much today. People who find themselves in positions of being a victim. Now tomorrow I'll give the disclaimers. Okay, let me say the points now. This is very important. Think about every time that you were a victim in your life. What's pushed so much today and propagated is think about where you were a victim and find the perpetrator and blame them for whatever they're doing so that you don't feel bad about yourself at all. The notion of it is fine. I agree with that. You shouldn't ever feel bad. You shouldn't fall into shame and guilt in a vicious cycle. You shouldn't. But it's very important in our religion, in our traditions, that whatever happens to you, you sit down, you ponder, and you find how did you contribute to that. But you can't do that if you don't have the prerequisites. You can't do that if you don't believe in a merciful God. You can't do that if you don't believe in a God that you do admit to your mistakes and He takes care of the rest. If you don't have that to support you, if you don't have that backing, then of course you're going to find a way to find the perpetrator and blame them for every single misery that you're experiencing in your life. But is that the solution? It's not. I wish it was. But it's not going to help you. You're not going to live a good life, even if you find the perpetrator, even if you find him or her, many a times, even if you find him or her and you blame them for it. Now, how are you going to live your life? To the contrary, when you look at our religion says, this is a narration, I think, from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. He says very clearly, لَيْسَ مِنَّا مَنْ لَمْ يُحَاسِبْ نَفْسَهُ فِي كُلِّ يَوْمٍ. The one who doesn't hold themselves accountable every single day for the actions that they do is not from us. Very clearly, you want to be from the Shia? You have to sit down every day. Well, by every day, of course, then if I say that, I'm probably one of the people who are not Shia. But when he says every day, at least, make an attempt once a week maybe if you haven't done it at all. Hold yourself accountable every single day. Muhasabah. Well, muhasabah is when you sit down and you say, what did I do today? And which one was right and which one was wrong? For the wrong, I ask Allah for forgiveness, the narration says. You see, he tells you that don't fall into the trap of forgetting about your mistakes because that's not going to do any good to you. But I will teach you how to remember your mistakes, admit to them, and feel good afterwards. The moment you find the mistake, you say, Astaghfirullah Rabbi wa atubu ilayh. Deep down in your heart, say, oh Allah, I won't go back to it. And if it's towards someone else, I'll ask for their forgiveness, and you take care of the rest. And that's it. Finish. Don't think about it one moment after this. If one moment after your istighfar, you look back and you feel, did God really forgive me or not? That's forbidden. You don't do that. Because that's a disrespect towards God. The moment you do the istighfar, don't look back. Put your head up, shoulders down or up. Which one's right? You put your head up, shoulders back. And be confident because Allah takes care of the rest. You feel confident, but confident in God, not in yourself now. Right? لَيْسَ مِنَّا مَنْ لَمْ يُحَاسِبْ نَفْسَهُ فِي كُلِّ يَوْمٍ. So you do the muhasabah. But if you don't engage in this, you will find other causes external to yourself. And you will blame them for what is happening in your life. But I wish this could help you. It doesn't. For the mistake, the religion says no. Sit down and find the mistakes and ask for forgiveness and don't let it dry. When it's, in Farsi we say don't let it dry, basically. When it's wet, when it's fresh, take care of it then. And then when it's to the perpetrators and those who have wronged you in a way in your life, I wish finding them and blaming them was something that would give you peace in this world. But if you are a wise student of this world and the system of God, you will know that there is nothing that brings peace to your heart more than forgiving the one who's wronged you. And this is what we see in our imams. This is what we see in their conduct. This is what the religion teaches us. It teaches this to you because it says, look, if you don't follow it, your life will be miserable. You look at the verses in the Quran. Someone once said, why does the Quran scare you so much of adhab? So he tells you what's the good side of it, what you will get if you do good, but then he suddenly scares you of the punishment. It's like, relax. It's not that deep. Well, it is. But again, God knows how He's created human beings. If I promise you the world and I tell you wake up every single day at 6 a.m. and you will get everything you want in the world, that on its own, your brain is not going to release energy for it as much. As much as if I tell you, if you wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, you will get the world. And if you don't, you know what's going to happen to you? And I threaten you, and your brain's going to go like, okay, I can see the benefit, and I can see the risk as well. This is how your brain releases energy. The system of God is created this way. He says, look, you follow this. If you follow the path of God, if you connect with Him, your life is going to be a good life. You're going to live a good life. Itminan, mu'mineen have itminan. God increases in their itminan, their certainty, their calmness inside their heart. But then, وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي, whoever looks away from my remembrance. They don't remember me. They don't care about remembrance of God and connection with Him in this world. فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا. He's going to live a life, but it's not going to be a good life. It may look good from the outside, but inside, it's not a good life. It's not a calm life. It's not a life that you can put your head down on a pillow at night and sleep comfortably. It's a life that on the surface level, some people will make it, as they say, but it doesn't really benefit them. And that's why you see so much drugs, suicide, in people who, quote unquote, have made it. It doesn't give them that unless they connect with something which is greater than them, i.e. God. I think that's enough for today. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us with His remembrance, the tawfiq of connecting with these teachings and implementing them in our lives, inshallah. Truly believing in them, feeling it. Feeling is very different. Sometimes I talk, but if I felt it, maybe not. It's so important to feel it. We ask Allah to help us feel this as well. Please recite the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Tonight, inshallah, we're going to remember Hurr ibn Yazid al-Riyahi. Who was Hurr ibn Yazid? Unlike the other companions of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, this person was a person who had made mistakes. This person is a person who committed sins, not normal sins, sins which to you and I are unforgivable sins. This person, if I say he was someone who was the main contributor to what happened in Karbala, I'm not exaggerating. But related to our concept that we discussed today of mistakes and sins and how God forgives, we see something happening which is extremely beautiful. The manifestation of God's forgiveness in a person, the embodiment of God's forgiveness, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, it was manifested there. From the companions of Imam Hussein, Hurr ibn Yazid al-Riyahi. Imam sees Hurr coming to him. Hurr is now doubtful. He doesn't know what's going on. when I see this, I don't think this is right. But what should I do? I'm a contributor so far towards this misery that's happening. But I can't be with these people. I can see the Imam on the other side. So he's in this conflict within him. The conversation between Imam and Hurr is beautiful though. He goes to Imam. The Imam sees it's Hurr ibn Yazid al-Riyahi. He says to the Imam, I have orders not to allow you move towards Kufa. Inside there's a conflict, but outside he's still obeying the orders. The Imam shows generosity towards him. He orders his companions to give water to the horses of Hurr's army, a manifestation of God's mercy. Then the conversation between Imam Hussein and Hurr. He says that Kufans have invited me, Imam Hussein. He says, look, I come in peace. The Kufans have invited me. But Hurr says, I have orders from Ubaidullah not to enter Kufa, and I'm not going to let you do that. The Imam says, let me go back to Medina. It's fine. But Hurr says, I'm not even allowed to let you go back. So the Imam is stuck there. When Hurr says this to the Imam, Imam replies to him, Thakalatka ummuk. May your mother mourn for you on your death. Hurr looks down. This is a moment where sometimes saves a person. He looks down. Instead of repeating the same thing to the Imam, he says, I would say the same thing to you, but your mother is a great lady. He shows respect. And he says, I'm not going to say the same. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. But then when he went to Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he put his head down towards the end. And he's ashamed. But the Imam says, Irfa' ra'sak. Bring your head up. Are you ashamed of what you have done? He says, yes, I'm sorry. He says, that's it. Don't say anything else. Anta hurrun kama sammatka ummuk. Until now you were a slave, but the moment you admit to it, Anta hurrun kama sammatka ummuk. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. Everyone together. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
वावैला हुसैनम वावैला सब बना लीजिएगा वावैला हुसैनम वावैला हुसैन वावैला हुसैनम वावैला हुसैन वावैला हुसैनम वावैला हुसैन वावैला हुसैनम वावैला हुसैन वावैला
सुगरा ने लिखा बाबा तुम्हें ख्वाब لکھا بابا تمہیں خواب میں دیکھا بے چین ہے دل میرا یہ کیا خواب میں دیکھا سغرا نے لکھا بابا تمہیں خواب میں دیکھا سغرا نے کہا بابا تمہیں خواب میں دیکھا بابا مجھے ایک خواب پریشان نظر آیا بابا مجھے ایک حشر کا سامان نظر آیا بے چین ہے دل میرا یہ کیا خواب میں دیکھا سغرا نے لکھا بابا تمہیں خواب میں دیکھا دیکھا ہے پھوپھی چادر خیمے پر کھڑی ہے میدانوں میں فوجوں کی طرف دیکھ رہی ہے بے چین ہے دل میرا یہ کیا خواب میں دیکھا سغرا نے لکھا بابا تمہیں خواب میں دیکھا ہے کسی دشت میں تنہائی کھڑے ہو پانی بھی میسر نہیں پیاسے ہی کھڑے ہو بے چین ہے دل میرا یہ کیا خواب میں دیکھا سغرا نے لکھا بابا تمہیں خواب میں دیکھا کیا تم کسی آفت میں گرفتار ہو بابا پھر کس لیے تم ایسے دل افگار ہو بابا بے چین ہے دل میرا یہ کیا خواب میں دیکھا سغرا نے لکھا بابا تمہیں خواب میں دیکھا ہے کہ ایک خیمے میں بے چین ہے مادر اور پیاس سے بےتاب ہے بھیا علی اصغر بے چین ہے دل میرا یہ کیا خواب میں دیکھا سغرا نے لکھا بابا تمہیں خواب میں دیکھا بے چین ہے دل میرا یہ کیا خواب میں دیکھا
Hussein, 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 Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Hussein, Hussein, Ya Imam.
متوجہ زیارت صلی اللہ علیک یا ابا عبد اللہ وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم جميعا السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب خصوصا سيدي ومولاي أبو الفضل العباس بن أمير المؤمنين السلام عليك يا قاسم بن الحسن ومسلم بن عقيل وحاني بن أرواح والحبيب بن مظاهر والهر شهيد الرياحي ومسلم بن أوسجا السلام عليكم جميعا شهداء كربلاء ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء يا معين الضعفاء والفقراء السلطان أبو الحسن علي بن موسى الرضا كن شفينا وشفي والدينا في يوم الجزاء السلام على آبائك السبع وأبنائك الأربع. السلام على أختك فاطمة المعصومة ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب العصر والزمان، سيدي الأمان الأمان الأمان. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، يا مظهر الإيمان، يا إمامنا وإمام الإنس والجان.